Well, hello, good people. Welcome back. If you've been following this series, this is the third video. The first video, we prepared the Oracle Linux server with 3 network interfaces. And in the second video, we prepared and cloned our VM to set up our second node for our RAC configuration. In this video, we are going to be working on allocating shared disks for ASM configuration. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, welcome to my channel where I provide to you Oracle-related content for your personal and professional development. And if you like my videos, please like and subscribe to my channel. Also, do not forget to enable notifications so that you stay informed of when I release new content. So in the last video, we ended up where we cloned our VM. So we made some network configuration settings. So in this video, we are going to be assigning, we are going to be creating disks and assigning them to be used for ASM storage. So in order for us to do that, I would go ahead and shut down my VMs. I'll shut down both of them. And this is for node 1, and this is for node 2. Now, when these VMs are shut down, I would go ahead and create disks externally and make them shareable and assign them to these, to at least in the beginning, I will assign them to the first node, where I would go ahead and make the necessary ASM configurations. And then now I will attach them to the second node. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead to our VirtualBox manager. And here I would go to File and take my Virtual Media Manager. So this is where I am going to create those disks. So while I am in my Virtual Media Manager, I would go ahead and create a disk. And I would use a virtual hard disk. I would give it a fixed size. This would be for the first one. Now I want to make sure that I give it a name that I like. That would be easy for me. All right, so I would give it ASM disk 1. And I would give this one a size of, let's give it maybe 40, because usually in my experience, when you're configuring grid infrastructure, you want a disk allocated specifically for OCR. And also there is a management DB. So typically those tend to go on the same disk, and it typically needs about 37, 38 gigabytes of space. So to be on the safe side, I'll give it 45. And I would create that disk. So typically, the larger the size of the disk you're creating, the longer it's going to take. So the next 2 we are going to assign are going to be disks that we're going to use for the data disk group and the FRA disk group. And I would allocate to those maybe 50 to 75 gig. That would host our database files and certainly our flash recovery, our recovery files as well. Okay, so the first one has been created. We would use the same, and I can probably just make it shareable at this point since I have it on here. So it's ASM disk 1. I would just go ahead and make it shareable, and then I hit apply. So now that disk is shareable. So let's go ahead and create another one, virtual hard disk, and I would give it a fixed size and make it, I'll make it 75. I'll give it its name, ASM disk 2. And I would create that disk. Now this probably will take about a minute. Or maybe a little more. So a few more seconds and we should be done for this one. All right, that one is good. And let's go ahead and create, oh, let's make this shareable. Since I have it up here, I'll go to type, I will make it shareable and I would apply. And that is good. So I would go ahead and create the final disk. Let's go next. Still same thing, fixed size, and I would rename it ASM disk 3. And I would give it a size of 75 gig. And let's go ahead and create that. This would take a similar amount of time like the last one. I mean, you can allocate sizes. I know not everyone's computer has the same amount of hard disk space, but you can, assign the sizes as what works for your laptop or your desktop, whatever system you're using. All right, now that one is done, we'll go ahead and make it shareable as well and apply. So right now we have created 3 disks that are shareable. Now we go over to node 1 and we open up settings. And under storage, we are going to attach these disks right here. So if I go ahead and do that, a hard disk, it is going to give me an option. So I will attach this first one. I will attach the second one. And I will attach the third one. All right, so I have all the 3 disks attached, and I would go ahead here and hit OK. Now, if you see here, right here under storage, it says this disk is shareable. The 45 gig is all the 3 of them are shareable. So I can also go ahead and attach this right now on the second node, but I would only be starting up the first node to configure them. So let's go ahead and attach them to the second node. The first one is disk 1. I would attach the second one, disk 2, and I would attach the third one, disk 3. All right, so now all of them are here, shareable, shareable, shareable. So let's go ahead and validate that. So like I said, I will be opening up only node 1 to do the configuration. So let's go ahead and start node 1. All right, so node 1 is up. Let's go ahead and perform the necessary configuration. So node 1 is what we are starting, which is the 111. So let's go ahead and start that. All right, so right here, we already allocated this. I did 45 just to be on the safe side. So we are going to make sure that we double check, because when you allocate disks to your virtual machine, they fall under this dev folder. So ls-l /dev SD star. So they are now right here. So we have SDB, SDC, and SDT. So what we are going to do is we're going to format them and partition them. So let's start off with SDB. So let's start off with that. Now we are going to use this. So N, P for primary, 1, no default, and then of course W, that would save the partition. And then we would do the same for SDC. We would follow the same process, N, P, 1, enter, W to save that partition. And we would do the same for SDD. So N, P, 1, enter, W, and then we would save that partition. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at that location like we did before. So ls-l dev SD star. You now see that SDB has been partitioned. So there is SDB1, SDC1, and SDD1. So now that that has been done on our RAC node 1, remember in the previous video, we downloaded the ASM libraries. That is what we are going to be using now to configure our ASM. So we can run it expressly from the user SBIN location. But if I type which Oracle, all right, let's minimize that. If I type which Oracle ASM, it tells me Oracle ASM is going to run from the SBIN location. So that's why you have the command. Usually I like using the absolute path. So let's copy this one and then let's configure our ASM. Now, our interface, remember I said I was going to install a grid infrastructure with the user grid being the owner. So I would go with grid and the default group or install. On boot, you want that library to start on boot and you want the ASM disks to be scanned on boot. So that does it for this configuration. Now, I would also do that for node 2. When I bring up node 2, I would do the same configuration for node 2. For RAC node 1, I want to initialize the Oracle ASM. So let's go ahead and do that. So that has been initialized. Now, at this point, I would want to make sure that I create these disks and make sure that when we scan the system on start, we kind of see this disk. So Oracle ASM create disk, and I would create all of them all at the same time. Now, usually you would see in some documentations or some videos, the CRS group would be the one that would be created, and then later on you would use ASM CA, the ASM configuration assistant, to create those. But I would just go ahead and do that right now. So that has been done. I would create the data group as well. And I would create the flash recovery area group as well. All right, so that is done. Now, on both RAC 1 and RAC node 2, we would go with our scan disks and then list disks. So let's do that first on node 1. And then if I list the disk right now, you would be able to see the disks that have been created. So let's go ahead and do that. So CRS, data, and frag groups have been created. Now let's go ahead and start up node 2. And we would do the same for node 2. So let me bring up node 2 just to make sure that I see when it starts. That way we can open up its own session and do the same thing. All right, looks like node 2 is coming alive. There we go. So let's go back here and then let's go to sessions. Let's go to sessions and then we start up the root session for node 2, the 112. And the same things that I did for RAC node 1 in terms of Oracle ASM configure, I would do the same for node 2. So let's go ahead and do that. Grid or install on boot, yes, on boot, yes. So that is good. And then we would do the initialization. And that looks good as well. We don't create the disk, they have already been created. So right now, what we are going to do is we're going to scan the disks. Okay, now let's list the disk and then I'll make the comment that I wanted to do. So this command actually on my document has to be the same for node 2. So I'll paste that here and then I paste that here as well. So it eventually has listed the disks. Now, I want you to pay attention to this. So mounting the ASM library driver file system. So this is dev Oracle ASM. Now, this would come into play when we start running a grid infrastructure. There is something we call the discovery path, where it's going to discover these ASM disks. So this is of importance. So let's pay attention to that. So that brings us to the end of our ASM configuration. Hopefully this wasn't such a long video. In the next video, we would go ahead and start our installation of our grid infrastructure. And certainly, I always say, if you find this video interesting, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, enable notifications, and make sure you share with your friends so that they also can benefit from such content. Thank you and see you in the next video.